please stop your videos, Krishna. I request you to please stop your video. That would be so kind. Thank you. So in this session, we will be having discussion. In fact, you will be exposed to smart contracts, more on smart contracts, Solidity language. And we are so glad to announce the speaker of this session, Dr. Amey Karkare. Dr. Amey Karkare, I know now for a long time as out to people to ensure that fundamental areas of computer science are covered. He has been delivering courses on Python programming specifically. And this time we thought of having this course on blockchain technology and applications. Dr. Amey Karkare is an associate professor in computer science and engineering at IIT Kanpur. And he has been teaching various courses. He is basically an expert in compiler optimization, and he has developed certain courses in IIT Kanpur on advanced compiler optimization, compiler design, software development and operations. He completed his PhD from IIT Bombay way back in 2008, and he did his bachelor's degree from IIT Kanpur in 1998. He has several awards and recognition to his credit, like 1998 Batch Faculty Award in recognition of his excellence to use innovation and technology enhance content to improve the quality of undergraduate instructions. He has also been a recipient of P.K. Kelkar Young Faculty Research Fellowship at IIT Kanpur during 2013 to 16. Well, in professional activities, he has done some very important works, like for people with different ability, especially visual impairment, how to make instructions which are friendly to these type of I'm sorry, I was disconnected. I request Professor Amey Karkare to please continue with his lecture. Thank you so much, Professor.
May I request the TS to start recording the session? And let me share my screen.
Recording in progress.
So, can someone just confirm by sending a message that you are able to see my screen and hear me properly? Thank you. Thank you for the confirmation. So in the morning session, you had a journey of blockchain from its starting date till what it is now. And you could see that this is a concept which was introduced as Bitcoins in around 2008. And it just less than 14 years, and things have been progressing very, very rapidly. Things are changing. So a lot of technical terms were there, a lot of complex as well as important concepts were introduced And as Professor Ojha has said that we will cover many of these concepts over our 6-day journey together. And you'll have to bear, I mean, some of the things we cannot explain today, but they will become clear as we move forward. So in the morning session, Sir Shukla talked about blockchain version 1, where it was just about bitcoins and ledgers, and then version 2 where it started looking at smart contracts. Okay, so in this session we will discuss smart contracts as well as Solidity language, and we'll look at how these smart contracts are compiled, executed, and so on. Again, like earlier speakers, I will take the QA in the chat box towards the end. Okay, so please bear with me again, because this is something where you are going to do hands-on. So let me again say that please go through this video. I mean, look at the video. Don't try to do hands-on right now, because the session after this, our TA will give you some problems, and we'll have a lab session where you will be doing all this on your computer as well. Okay, so if you are able to follow, that's okay. If you are not able to follow, concentrate on videos and slides that I am presenting, and you will get a chance to do everything hands-on. One nice thing about blockchain as a philosophy itself is that everything is in open. Okay, so all these examples are taken from public repositories, and anything that I have added, I will also make it public to you. So don't worry about writing notes or trying to copy everything. Focus on understanding. Okay. So since we are talking about a programming language, it is not possible to cover programming language completely in 1.5 hour, 2 hour session. So we'll assume that you have some knowledge of existing languages, like 1 or 2, like Python or Java, and we'll see how Solidity or these smart contracts are similar to them and where are the differences. Okay, so we'll start with this, and again request, please switch off your videos if you are not one of the speakers. I mean, it looks very odd when somebody switches on the video and starts combing their hair with hands. Okay, so please stop your video. We can also see you changing your hairstyle, which is kind of distracting for us. All right. So when we say smart contracts, suddenly many people get very alert that, oh, there is something legal going on here. But again, this name, do not get confused, do not get frightened by it. Smart contract is nothing but a computer program. Okay, so it's not at all anything more than a C or Java or some other language program that you have seen till now. So it's not at all a legal contract which is going to haunt you in future. Okay, so it's as legal a contract like any other C program or Java program. So, but the term is stuck because it again started from financial side of it. So it started, and it started in fact before Bitcoin. So the smart contracts are again, since they are programmed, they have to be written in a programming language. So they are typically written by humans in a high-level language, which are easier to read by humans. And the popular language to write smart contracts is Solidity, but it is not the only language. There are other languages as well. So the language written, a program written in Solidity, it gets compiled to a bytecode using a compiler. Now Solidity compiler is called SolC, and then it can be executed on a virtual machine, and the virtual machine is called Ethereum Virtual Machine or EVM. So as you can see that this seems very similar to a Java environment. Like those who have done Java programming will see the similarity between a Java program and a Ethereum program. Right? So even Java also, you use Java-C to compile it into class files or .java, .class programs, and then you run it on Java Virtual Machine, JVM. Okay. So smart contracts as a language or as a program seem very similar to Java programs, but then there are many differences too that we will try to observe when I throw some example programs. So smart contract, one major difference as compared to a Java program is it is immutable after deployment. So once you deploy a smart contract, it becomes kind of read-only. Okay, and again, Professor Sandeep explained in details what is mean by being immutable. You cannot change the existing code once it is gone onto blockchain. You cannot change the existing deployment. Yes, but if you want to upgrade it, if you want to do some changes, a new instance can be deployed. Okay. In case of smart contract, there is also a way to destroy it. But it cannot happen that 2 days later you think that, oh, I should change this variable from 5 to 7 and the same smart contract gets changed. No, you have to deploy a new instance of the contract. Smart contract, something very, very important, it is deterministic, which means outcome is always the same under given environment, under given context. Okay. Now some languages like C, C++, they are notorious for having many undefined behaviors. Such a thing is not allowed in smart contract, and you can very well understand that. See, these are the things which we are going to use for writing legal contracts or transactions, financial transactions and so on. So we want that everyone should see the same result, provided they start from the same starting point. The smart contracts are restricted. Basically, they can access very limited stuff. Sorry for this typo. This stuff. Okay. So if you again recall, Professor Sandeep saying that currently blockchains they do not allow interaction with external world. Okay. But now these limitations are being looked into, and to make blockchains more effective, more application friendly, some kind of limited access will be allowed in the next version, keeping security and openness intact. Okay, so typically a smart contract can refer to variables which are in the contract itself or the state of the contract. It can look at the person who has, person in the sense again the context or the account which has initiated the execution of the contract, and they can also look at some previous blocks like 4 or 5 previous blocks. Okay, but it cannot look at let's say a file stored on your desktop, or it cannot look at the stock market behavior. Just want to clear this. So smart contract, it conceptually runs on a single computer. Okay, so this whole Ethereum blockchain, it is considered a single computer, even though if you recall, blockchain is stored on many different nodes. Every participating node kind of keeps a copy of blockchain on its own system. So in reality, smart contracts runs on EVM on every Ethereum node. But then, as we said, the deterministic property guarantees that all these instances behave identically. So it does not matter whether you are running it on your desktop or someone else's Apple machine or someone else's Linux machine. No. So all of them will behave similarly, identically. And a smart contract is initiated or run only if it is called by a transaction. So it's not, in that sense, not like an executable which you can run whenever you want. You have to run it in a specific way. So think about this blue icon as Ethereum network, which is there worldwide. It could be stored on a single computer. Okay, but and this is also the logo of Ethereum. So how do you create a smart contract? Basically, it's like any other programming language, any other programming file. So you write it or edit it in a .sol file. You compile it using Solc. If everything goes fine, then you can deploy it. But if something doesn't work, then you have to go back and then change it. Once it compiles, then you have to deploy it. Now this is where it starts differing from traditional programming languages. So deployment is not on your local machine or something, it's actually on the Ethereum network. So it goes and resides in the Ethereum network. Now all these smart contracts and some other kind of accounts are residing on Ethereum blockchain. So very soon you will learn about something called externally owned accounts. So these are the accounts which are linked to individuals or maybe your wallets. Okay, so these can initiate transaction, and the transaction can internally call a deployed contract. Okay, now we have not yet done Ethereum. It was supposed to be covered a little bit, but very soon you will see that each externally owned account has a address. This is like your identity on the Ethereum. It also holds some ethers. Okay, so ethers are required so that you can pay for your services. And finally, it also holds some keys, basically to sign and to prove that you are the correct owner of those ether and things. So whenever a transaction is initiated, it can in turn call some deployed contract. So each contract also has an address. So recall that these addresses we have like pointers. So every contract is situated at certain address in Ethereum. And contract can also hold some ethers because you might have to receive ether or send ethers to them, so they hold. But difference is that contracts are also associated with the code that you have written in Solidity and which has compiled down to Ethereum bytecode. Okay, so this is kind of difference between a wallet account, which is more like your wallet, and deployed contract, which is more like a computer software program. Okay, now contracts themselves can, in the course of transaction, call other contracts and so on. So this is the kind of general communication which is happening on Ethereum blockchain. Similarly, there can be another communication where transactions are between two externally owned accounts, someone directly transferring some money to someone else and so on. So this Ethereum computer, world computer, it's a collection of all these deployed contracts, all these externally owned addresses and so on. And so, and these are always interacting with each other. The difference between deployed contract and externally owned account is that deployed contract have to be initiated by directly or indirectly by some externally owned account. Okay. So then we have to look at Solidity. So there was just a very quick overview of how these contracts work. But our main goal in this session and the next session is to actually look at Solidity and look at how it is deployed, how it is run. So let me just quickly check if there are any queries. Okay, nice. So few questions. Lab on which language? So lab will be on Solidity because that's the most popular language for blockchains. And then someone has asked, what is deployment? So deployment is like putting your contract for people to access. Okay, so it's like downloading an app. So when you download an app, you're deploying an app on your mobile. Similarly, contract has to be uploaded onto Ethereum. Ethereum can be thought of as the big computer which is running. Okay, so conceptually it is a single computer. Practically, these are the nodes which are connected together, which are running Ethereum programs. Okay. So deployment is just like creating an application on some system. Next question: what is an Ether? So Ether is the currency for Ethereum. Okay, so yeah, so there is slight disconnect. So Bitcoin, just like it's a currency as well as the system, but in Ethereum, the network is called Ethereum, but the currency which is kind of shared is called Ether. And in fact, Ether as there is Y, there is other terms also for smaller units of Ether. Someone has asked, what is a wallet account? Basically, wallet account is like a manager which maintains your blockchain accounts, your Ethereum or Ethers or Bitcoins or other things. So it's like your purse in which you keep your coins. But then these are smart purses which can interact on your behalf. with other accounts, other wallets. So what kind of programs can be written in Solidity? With these programs we add on into the existing blockchain products from someone? Yes. So as you saw in my previous slide, let's go back. So this Ethereum is kind of is conceptually a single computer, and everyone keeps adding their programs on top of whatever is existing. And if you remember again, Professor Sandeep told you about blockchains. Blockchains have a unique view of the world. Okay, there's a single chain. So whatever contract you are adding, it is kind of going into that same chain. Other languages for writing smart contracts, so you can directly write into EVM, Ethereum virtual machine, and some more you can look at. Okay. Any other implementation other than Ethereum? So all this you can look at Google. I mean, this is something where every day people are coming up with different kind of different blockchains day after day. So what is externally owned account? I think I can say which consensus does Ethereum use? Are there any developer SDK? Is it necessary? So yes, we are covering all this in the part of the course. So somebody asked very important question: is it necessary to have use a currency or Ether to make a smart contract? I mean, these questions will be answered pretty soon. So please hold on for a few minutes. Can we say blockchain is distributed database? We can say yes, it's holding some data, but now unlike a database, traditional database, it's the Ethereum smart blockchain or Ethereum network is not a passive network. You are executing programs, so it's slightly more than a simple plain database. And is this also encrypted? I don't know what do you mean by is this also encrypted? Because as Professor Sandeep said, Bitcoin is not encrypted. What is encrypted is your identity, the signature that you are sending. So you have to be little clear about what is encrypted and what is not. So data typically is not encrypted. What is around the data, it is encrypted. The identity is encrypted. So hash is different from encryption. Hashing is just one-way thing. Encryption is something which gets encrypted, could be decrypted later, and it is used for validation. Okay. So how Ethereum is different from Bitcoin? It's as different as US dollar is different from rupees, Indian rupees or pounds. Okay. What is a key? So key is something like you are encrypting. Okay, you are converting some data so that not everyone can read it. So key here is a software equivalent of your key which you use for lock. Those who have key can open the lock. Similarly, those who have key can open the encrypted data. And all this is software. I mean, it's finally a number or a large string. And secret because you don't tell anyone. Right? It's like a password. So key is like a password. And what is the difference between key and code? I mean, a string can be key and a code is like a program. Okay, so any person can mine Ethereum? Yes, you can mine it. So let's stop here. Let's go on to the Solidity part. See, again, there are two different things. There is this whole blockchain infrastructure, which we are not covering in this course or in this session. I should not say course, in this session. But what we assume that blockchain exists, this Ethereum network exists, and now we want to do something. We want to run our program onto Ethereum. So it's like having a computer and writing program for it. Okay. In this session, we are not going to build a computer. We don't want to understand in details how computer works, but we want to understand how programming can be done. One question is explain the difference between hash and encryption. It is slight confusion. Okay. So encryption says that I want to hide some data from certain people, but some other people should be able to access it. Okay. How can I do it? I can encode the data and tell my friend this is the encoded data, because maybe I have to send it by post, but over telephone I tell him that this is the key, this is the password which you can use to decrypt it. So it's like sending a sealed envelope to a friend and sending a separate direct envelope or over telephone telling him that use these numbers to encrypt or decrypt the data. Okay. So these are like other. Hashing is something very different. Hash says that given one value, I want to convert it into some other kind of value. That's all. I do not want to get the original value back, but later if someone gives me the original value, I can hash it again and check that the hash is consistent. It's a one-way thing. And any books for learning Solidity? Yes, there are. You can just search on net. There are many books. In fact, the online resources are good enough. Okay, so let's move forward. I think a lot of questions have been answered. So though we have discussed it, let's have some discussion. What is Solidity? So it's a main programming language for writing smart contracts for Ethereum. And Solidity is a contract-oriented language. So you must have heard about this term called object-oriented language. Okay, so Solidity is contract-oriented, where you are creating contracts, something like you create objects in Java. Okay, so each contract is responsible for storing the logic which will transact with other existing contracts, other existing artifacts in the blockchain. It's a high-level programming language. We'll see very soon that it looks very similar to JavaScript or Python or C++ or Java. Okay. So now just some technical thing. Just like C++, it is also statically typed. It means compiler checks for a lot of things, that you are using integers correctly, you are using booleans correctly, your return values are proper, your function parameters are proper, and so on. And very similar to object-oriented language, it supports inheritance. Like Python and Java and C++, it supports libraries, which means I can create few programs and release it, and you can use my programs as libraries. You don't have to rewrite all the things every time. Okay. So basically, Solidity has all the capabilities that can be used to build industrial strength blockchain applications. But don't think that in this 1.5 hour session you will be able to learn it. I am just going to introduce very simple concepts and some simple programs. Now, you have Solidity, but the problem is that unlike Java or C, it does not run on your computer. It requires blockchain. Okay. So how do you test your programs? How do you check that they are not wrong before sending it onto the network, before deploying it on the real network? Okay. Now, once again, for our simple programs, you might say, why is all this distinction required? But once you are writing complex code, you want to test it. You want to do unit testing, you want to do some kind of functional testing, and so on. So, Solidity has a very nice IDE, integrated development environment, or you can think about editor plus tester called Remix. So it's an open source web and desktop application. In fact, web application itself is good enough. You need not install it on your system. It works on almost all browsers. So it gives you access to a fast development cycle, and it has a lot of plugins, and it has very intuitive GUI, very simple GUI, so that you can start writing Solidity program and executing them from day one itself. Okay, and then Remix can be used to simulate this entire journey of contract development. Okay, so basically you can use it as a playground for learning and teaching Ethereum. However, it has its own limitation because you are not really running things on a blockchain. Some of the features of which can affect your actual blockchain actual contracts cannot be simulated in Remix. So we will go over some more complex, more sophisticated systems tomorrow. So Remix, as I said, it's a web-based application. It's available online on remix.ethereum.org. Okay, so if you go to this site, you will see an IDE where you can write your programs, you can deploy it, you can compile it, deploy it, run it, and so on. Okay, so it's just a simulation of actual blockchain network or Ethereum network. So let's start with very simple Solidity programs. So note once again, I am not going to discuss Solidity as a programming language. The reason is teaching any programming language takes a lot of time, and assuming you know one programming language like C or C++, Java, Python, I don't think it will be very difficult to understand syntax of Solidity. What we are more interested in is program semantics or meaning and how to run Solidity programs. Okay. So let's move. So first program, which is very, very simple, I am calling it one_storage. The reason being this program is part of this Remix ID. When you first time go to this site, you will see this program given to you as an example. Okay. So what this program does and what it does not do, it does not deal with money at all. Okay, it does not deal with Ethereum, it does not deal with Bitcoin or anything. It's a very simple program which just stores. Okay, it's like a storage. So I have given you few lines of code. Okay, so U in 256 is kind of data type. It says it's a 256-bit integer type, and then we are creating a number variable, and then I have a function. I will go into details of different things, but this function is going to store into this variable number whatever I pass to it. Okay, I believe those who have done any kind of programming at least conceptually understand these 4-5 lines of code. Okay, if someone doesn't understand it, please post on chat these 4-5 lines. Again, don't worry too much about specific things like public or uint, but in general, the idea behind this program, is it clear? Right, if someone it's not clear, then please post. Okay. So this is a very simple program. It creates a variable called number, and then it stores. Whenever someone calls this function store, passes a number, it will just store that number. So this is like a storage. You are storing value in a number. Okay. So very good. Someone has already pointed out. You can post your ideas if you have, but don't post too many things. It will be difficult to follow that, and I will lose some questions. So is the comments in green color? So anyone who has used Java or C++ or C will immediately realize these things inside /* comments. But then they are slightly more than comment. These are documentation comment. Okay, so they also document the program using tools like Deoxygen. Okay, so they are multi-line comments. Yes. And these add param, they are like they are giving what are the parameters and what is the role of these things. So it's slightly more than comment, but yes, this is comment. Then you can see function start with keyword function has a name, parameters, and then body. In between there is something called public, but all of you can guess this public says that this function is visible to general public. Okay. In contrast to something we will see which is only available to contract, not to outside world. Okay, yeah, so it's all the scope of this function, right? So very simple program, it's incomplete yet. So now if I am storing the number, I should also be able to retrieve it or read it. So then I change this program slightly. So I add another function. At this point, again, if you don't worry too much about exactly everything, idea should be very clear. There is a function called retrieve, and retrieve will just return back whatever is the value stored in the number. Okay, and now you can see that, yeah, so the syntax part which you have to learn from some book or online documentation. For function, you have to say function followed by name, parameters if there are any, the visibility or scope, and in this case, because it is returning, now this view is a little technical thing because it also interacts with JavaScript programs. So it tells you whether it is returning a value or a transaction and so on. But for now, we can just forget about view for a few minutes. So it says it returns the number U into 256. Okay. So this is the signature and this is the body. Like any other programming language. So to write a function in Solidity, you have to start with this keyword called function, the name of the function. followed by some information about how this function is going to behave. So this is a general function. So anyone can use it. So it's a public function. Anyone can use it. It returns a transaction if you are dealing with JavaScript, but right now we won't look at that part. And it returns an integer value, okay, which is a 256-bit integer. So this is about the details. And finally, how does it return? In this case, we are just returning the number which we had stored. So you can see this just like a storage where you put some values and then later you can retrieve it. Okay. But then this is also not the complete program, because remember, Solidity is a contract-oriented language. So everything should belong to a contract. Signature, someone asks what signature? Signature means the behavior of the function, like the prototype, if you have done C or C++ programming. Okay, so this slide. So now all these things should go inside this keyword called contract, and you have to give a name to the contract. So note that in Solidity, you have to write functionality inside one or more contracts. So this contract, now we have something similar to an object in object-oriented programming. So we have a contract which will go and run, or which will reside on Ethereum network. Now this contract has a state, which means it has a variable in it, number. And what can it do? It can store. If some transaction asks to store a number, it can store it. If some transaction asks to give back the number, it can just give back the value. Okay. So people have to be little patient about deploying and all. So I'm just coming to that, but first you have to understand the program. So now this is kind of a complete program, complete contract. So again, let me repeat. I have very, very simple contract. It is a smart contract, but it's a very simple contract. Only thing it does is, it has an internal state or internal way to store a number, and other transactions, when they interact with this contract, they can either store a number or they can see what number has been stored. That is all this contract does. Okay. Someone says, what is contract-oriented language? In Solidity, everything is contract. Just like in object-oriented language, everything is object. So you interact with contracts. Right? Now, there are few more things. Though this is a complete Solidity program, we want to add something more, what is called compiler version Pragma to Solidity programs. The reason being, we are working on something. This blockchain thing is very, very state of the art. Every day things are changing. Okay, new rules are coming up, new changes are coming up. There are bugs which are getting found, then bugs get fixed. Language itself is getting enhanced. So Solidity language is also changing continuously. New features are added, bugs are fixed, etc., etc. So something that is working today may not work tomorrow with the new version. Okay, things may or may not be compatible. So it is advisable to specify a compiler version. Okay, note that as far as language of program is concerned, you have a full program, but then language is changing. So maybe tomorrow Solidity may not be able to run this program. So you also specify which version you develop this program, or what are the potential versions where this program will execute. So that's why you add this line called Pragma Solidity. And then here there are some versions. Again, you can specify that this program should run with Solidity version 0.70 or later, but Solidity version 0.90 or lesser. Okay. Now don't worry too much about it. Basically what you can do is always check for Solidity version, compiler version on your system, and you can always specify that as Pragma, because of course you have developed using a certain Solidity version, right? So note that once again, this is just a contract which is going to be compiled, which is going to be deployed on the Ethereum network, and someone else will execute these functions, store, retrieve, and so on. Okay. So we still haven't seen how to run this, but this will be run on an Ethereum network. Ethereum is not the default Ethereum, but some kind of network which can handle Ethereum protocols. Okay, so now we come to that, how do we run it? So first we will do it is using Remix. That's what we are going to do today. And we will, I ask you to note down whatever you see when I run the program. There will be a lot of observations, and that's how you will learn. And it should answer few queries that we have seen till now. So let me just switch to Remix thing. So again, a confirmation, can you see my browser screen?
Yes, sir, it is visible.
It is visible, thank you. So this is nothing but a simple browser. I'm using Firefox browser. I just opened a new tab. So you can see that it's nothing very, very complex. Only thing is I used an address. Let me type it once again. So that those fonts are little small, but so font size does not increase. But I'm typing remix.ethereum.org. You can search on Google for Remix. That's fine. Okay. When you click, when you press enter, you will reach this page, which is Remix IDE. Some warnings, etc. may come and so on. Okay. So you can see that you have some toolbars on the very left. We'll come to these. There is a file explorer. Basically, it is telling you the organization of your Remix project. And then there is this panel which is for editing and execution. Okay. So when you open Remix, just click on this contract, and in your case, you will see 3 files when you start. 1 storage.sol, 2 owner.sol, 3 ballot.sol. Other files I have added for demonstration purpose. We will go through them later in the today's session. But what I showed you was this contract called storage. Okay. The program is exactly the same that I showed you earlier. Just delete some spaces so that the whole program is visible on one page. Like, you don't have to worry too much about exactly what this program is doing. This program will be available to you very soon. Okay, it's exactly the same program that I have shown you earlier. Okay. Now, where do I run it? Okay, so ideally, I can run my Solidity program on Ethereum network, some Ethereum network, but because I am doing some testing, I want to, before I really deploy it, I want to check it works correctly and so on. So Remix gives me a virtual machine, okay, where I can deploy it, where I can compile it. So you can see that there is this. So first block is your file explorers block. Second here on the very left is compiler. So I can select. So Remix gives you access to lot of compiler versions. I'm just using whatever is the default currently. We are not so much concerned. Only when you write very, very complex programs, you have to worry about specific versions and so on. Okay. So I can press on compile and it will compile my program. Okay. Now note that this green tick comes, which tells me the program is already compiled. You can also select auto compile and other things, but these are not very, very important. Okay. Now once it is compiled, now you have to run it in some sense. Okay. So someone is asked how Solidity is associated with smart contract. Smart contract is a concept. Solidity is the programming language to implement that concept. So the third icon here is for deploying and running the transaction. Okay. Now note that Remix gives me few choices about the network on which I have to deploy my transaction, smart contract. So again, you don't have to worry about it. These are like some simulated execution environment. And if you see, you cannot read it, it's very fine, but it says execution environment does not connect to any node. Everything is local and in memory only. So these names, they are saying London, Berlin, and this and that, but don't worry about it. Nothing is going to London here, nothing is going to Germany. Everything is local. Okay. So this is a simulated network. You can see that when you run Remix, it gives you few accounts. So these are like users which are using the network that we are running our contract on. So once again, remember that in general, any Ethereum network is like a single computer which is running on multiple nodes, and there are multiple users. Now, the identity of these users is nothing but their addresses, their what you call say this encrypted or hashed addresses. Okay. So now, because we are not running on real network, Remix gives us a virtual network as well as virtual users on this network. Okay. And similarly, it is also giving us some fake money. It's like you play these games like a business, okay, where you have some fake note to play with to buy and sell property. Similarly, Remix also gives you some 10 accounts with 100 Ether each. If you really want more account, you can press this plus and you will get more and more account. Okay. Similarly, when you are running these contracts, I mean, there's a concept of gas, which is like spending money. Okay. So you are saying don't run a contract if it spends too much money, if it does too much computation. So there is some limit. So you can, for certain things, you can also specify some values. So as you can see, there are different units of currency, Y. So this is Giga Y, this Fimi and Ether. So all these are sub units of Ether. I think 1 Ether is some 10 to the power 16 or some Y, I don't even remember. A very big number, 10 to the power 17 or so. Okay. Then this is the contract. If you have multiple contracts, you can tell which contract to deploy and so on. Okay. So now when I press deploy, again, remember I have a virtual computer called London, which is the collection of virtual nodes. I have a compiled contract called one_storage. When I say deploy, I get a program which is gone onto this virtual network and stored at a certain address. So if you see at the very bottom, it shows me the deployed contract. This is the contract that I wrote at certain address. This address is not fully visible, but let me just show it. So I have copied that address. I'm just going to type it here for you to see. So you can see this is a big address. It's like a pointer. Some address, virtual address in my virtual computer. Okay. We don't have to worry about exact numbers. This will be different for different people, but it's just a unique address where this contract is now sitting in my Ethereum network. And once again, when I say Ethereum network, right now I'm always talking about this virtual network. So it's sitting there on this address. Notice that for every function that I created here, I get an interface to call this function. Okay. So is this clear? Okay, so what is gas in Solidity? So gas is a unit of work done. So this is not part of Solidity, this is part of your blockchain network, the Ethereum blockchain network, where different operations use, in a normal computer you have these cycles, right? That multiplication takes certain cycles, addition takes certain cycles. So in case of Ethereum network, the amount of work done is computed in terms of gas. And again, later you will see that to make sure your transactions work in a reasonable cost. And similarly, they do not block all the resources. Basically, you don't want someone to write a program which never terminates and hog all the resources. So there is certain limit that you put on transaction. So gas, it will put a limit. Okay, so gas limit is saying that your transaction should finish in these many cycles, and accordingly some cost will be associated with the transaction. Now look at this. When we started, we had 100 Ether for all the accounts. The moment we deployed this contract, so by default, I mean, whatever the account is visible here, that is the one which is deploying the contract. Some number of Ethers were deducted. Okay, so this is like you are paying the system for holding your contract. So if you are running it on a real Ethereum network, you will have to you will have to actually pay in terms of ethers, which in turn means you have to actually pay in terms of money. Okay. So now this account is also going to be my default account, whatever is shown here. Okay. So let me just go to account number 3. Currently it holds full 100 ether because it has not done any transaction. So let me try to retrieve what is the value in this number. Okay, on it first I will store. So let me just store some number. Today's date is 3rd January. So let me just put 301 and store it. So you can see that something has happened. So from a given address, some value was stored, okay, and so on and so forth, right? So this value got stored. Again, we don't know what happened because it's not like a traditional computer where you can look at memory and figure out what the value got stored. You depend on a lot of this debug information. But interesting thing to note is, recall that this third account had 100 ethers. The moment it executed the transaction, some ethers were deducted. Okay, some ethers were deducted, so it is now less than. Now, how many ethers are deducted? So that depends on the amount of gas that was spent, basically the number of transactions that were number of operations that were done. Okay, and what is the cost of each operation and so on. Note that everything else is still 100 ethers. Okay. Let me just change to another account. Once again, I'm gone to the second account here. Recall that I stored value 301 in the number. Now I ask this second account to retrieve the value. And you can see that another transaction happened. It went to the virtual network that we have. The value was retrieved, and this is the value which was received. So we can see it is exactly 301. Okay. We can go back and check how much ether was spent with this account, but then you are slightly surprised. No ether is spent. It still has 100 ethers. So is this some mistake? We can check that now later. But let's go to some other account. Now this some other account can retrieve the value. Again, it got 301, or it can store a new value. Let's put 2022. Okay. Then now immediately we'll see its ether have gone down. It can again retrieve. Now it got the new value. Any other account can come and store or retrieve, but it's still getting the same value and so on. Okay. So in a way, your program is sitting on a network, and any of these external accounts can go and call the functions, right? So someone has asked in debug detail, it shows transaction and execution cost. Okay, see, so there are two things. There is a transaction, right, which has to go inside the blockchain. So there is some cost associated with this. But then within transaction, there are certain contracts, means some execution part, some program which is executed. Now execution of that program, as you notice, also has some cost associated with it. So these are the two different kind of cost associated. Then you notice that any time you do some transaction, more or less some expenses are there. Okay. Now on a fake network like this, these are fake ethers. You can get as many as you want, but on a real network, you are actually going to spend some money to deploy a contract, mostly to execute a contract, and similarly for other stuff. That is why it is important to have these IDEs to make sure what you deploy is really correct. Okay, you cannot keep changing like you do for your regular programs. Okay. So how is gas paid? Through ethers. If you don't have ether, you won't be able to pay for it. All this will be covered. So this look at the observations. I have noted down few observations, but others can also might have seen. So somebody asked very good question, can this cost be optimized? Yes, like any other program, you have to write, you can do 20 additions versus a single addition to compute some value. So your cost will come down by, let's say, about 20x if you do like that. So yeah, there are tools which can help you optimize your program and so on. So somebody asked, who is supposed to develop and deploy this smart contract? So again, these are people like you and me. So for example, Professor Sandeep said they have deployed these IIT Kanpur degrees are now on blockchain. So they must have created some kind of contracts which will create degrees and deploy it on blockchain. Okay, in that case, it's more like a data rather than program. So if you are going into tomorrow, if you go into government services and they ask you to develop a system to store land record onto Ethereum chain or some other blockchain, then you will be the one who will create and deploy those contracts. How blockchain network is created? It's volunteers. So people join. So someone start and then others join. Okay. So for example, Bitcoin network was started by Nakamoto. Then he invited some of his or her friend. We don't know, or it could be a group of people, and then that's how it started. And other people can join. So Neeraj has asked, can someone override the smart contract? So we will come to that. So that's part of observation. So let's please wait a few moments. Let's go over these observations. We also have some time limit. So initially Remix provided us with 15 accounts with 100 Ether each, but you can add more accounts. When we deploy the contract, some Ether got consumed from the very first account, because that's the default account, but you can change it as well. So why this Ether got consumed? So as we discussed, this is kind of making sure that not everybody is just sending random thing onto the network. Okay, so people have to pay for deploying their contract. And again, if you have your own private network, maybe you can decide not to charge people if you have very limited or permission blockchain for that matter. If you have very specific people who are going to deploy it for a company and so on. But in general, for an open blockchain, it will be good. It is always a good idea to have some cost associated with it. So after deploying, you saw that storage contract has its own address. And all the functions were accessible as buttons. Now these buttons are Remix IDE. In Remix we do not really have we do have, but it's easier to have these click buttons to execute functions. But in reality, tomorrow we will see when we use the truffle and other thing that you can write functions to call other functions. Okay. And similarly, if a function takes inputs, you saw the boxes where you can feed in those inputs. Every store costs some Ether, but retrieval does not. So think about smart contract as a state. Okay, reading or memory. Reading memory is much less costly in general because you can make copies and everyone can have cache and all. Lots of things are there possible. But when you are writing to a memory, when you are writing to storage, then there is a problem. In a way, you have to make sure that everyone is in the consistent view and so on. So it's a slightly complex operation. So, but then again, this is like a designer decisions. We don't have much say on it. So storage costs some Ether, retrieval does not. We saw that we used a variable called number, and this number is a persistent variable because we again saw that one contract wrote to the smart contract, changed the value of number. After some time, another contract tried to retrieve it and it got the last written value. Okay, so this is a persistent value. So it is also called a state variable. This is the state of the smart contract. And as I said, smart contracts behave in a deterministic way, provided the variable is same. You cannot say that one contract got value 301, another one got 222. Okay, that's because state changed in between. If two smart contracts start in the same, or two executions start in the same state, they will get the same value back. Mr. Sachin Sharma, I would request you to stop writing profanity on the chat window. If you don't want to attend the class, you can just leave. Nobody is forcing you to be in front of computer. Ashutosh is asking, does state data issue occur while reading? Not really. So if you see this, Ethereum computer is really a sequential computer. It's not like a parallel computer. Okay, so it cannot happen. Like these are the things which are guaranteed. Okay. So anytime we set value of a state variable, it will be saved to the blockchain, and it is getting written to the storage, not to local memory of any of the nodes. So again, practically this world computer is having multiple copies on multiple nodes, okay, but theoretically it is going to be stored into the blockchain, which is a committed transaction, okay, it's not written to local memory. So because we are running Remix, which is like a simulated blockchain on your local network, on your local computer, things are happening instantly. That is one of the limitations of Remix. Okay, you cannot reliably look at these issues like delay and all on Remix. In real computer, in real blockchain, it will take some time to store the value as well as to retrieve it. So this variable has a special scope. It is accessible to entire smart contract, unlike variable which is only accessible inside of functions. So if you create a variable inside function, then it will be a local variable. It will not persist across function calls. So it's very similar to global variables and local variables. The difference being global variables are really contract variables, local variables are only inside functions. Okay. So for people who are having trouble running Solidity or Remix, please wait. The next session will be lab session where we will work with you for hands-on. Okay, we will try to help you fixing any issues. Because this session will give you an overall idea, and then you can try and learn everything on your own. Okay. So now we saw that when one contract UA deployed the values, it stored the values, another contract retrieved it, third contract changed it. So really there is no control, it looked like. Anyone can go and change. And well, that is the reason someone said that I store a degree from IIT Kanpur and someone comes and changes my degree. Okay, so that's not really in a good smart contract, that won't happen. The states cannot be changed arbitrarily. We can control the rights. We will see something. Okay. And another observation, what we saw was very simple smart contract. It did not manipulate Ether directly. It was just, I mean, whatever blockchain deducted for deploying or for storing and so on, only that Ether was getting manipulated. We did not work with Ether at all. Okay. So someone asks why persistent variable is also called a state variable? Because it's a state of some variable in the computer. So Anant, as I said, right now we are not on a world computer. This is just a simulation. Okay, that's why it does not give us all the benefits or all the real interaction with the real blockchain. So that's why we have to go into other kind of things, advanced things, which we will discuss tomorrow. Okay. So now this first one was very simple. And yes, there are a lot of questions. Some of them we'll answer in lab session. Some of them I'm trying to answer as I go along. But unless we do the second thing, we'll not be able to take advantage of lab session. So let me quickly go over the second contract. This smart contract is taken from this book called Mastering Ethereum. But again, I would like you to have some attention, because see, these books will describe something which is also getting outdated. Sometimes it may not be working in the same way as we discuss it. Okay. So this faucet is a smart contract which gives Ether on demand. Now this is some kind of a donor which donates, but then again it can only give Ether up to a certain limit, and provided it also owns Ether. See, I can give money only if I own it, right? So something same thing with the smart contract also. So now we can create a contract which manipulates Ether. there are lots of questions about networks. So today we will look at Remix network. Tomorrow I will show you how to start some test network, and then later probably people from IBM might be able to tell you how to start your own commercial network. Okay, so so now I am showing you the full program, very not very complex program, but definitely complex than previous one. So you can see in this case, I have put a specific version which I used to develop this particular contract. Okay. So you can specify compiler pragma in many different ways. You can say greater than, less than, equal to, and so on. Now there is something special here. Here I have a function, a receive function. Now this is something which is Solidity specific, I mean the smart contract Solidity language specific. So this tells you that my contract can receive payments from external contracts. Okay, so again, don't worry too much about this line here. It is just saying that because I have to donate money, so I also need money, I also want to receive money. So this line says that this contract can receive money from anyone else. Again, by putting some code here, you can restrict who can pay, how much can pay, and so on. Right now, I don't care. I mean, I am just waiting for anyone to pay me money. Okay. At the same time, I can also allow others to withdraw money. What is withdraw? So this is again a function which will take as input how much money someone wants to withdraw. Again, anyone can call this function. Okay. But then when this function executes, I am going to limit the withdrawal amount. Okay. By default, the values in smart contract or Solidity are in Y, WEI, unit is Y. So this is 10 to the power 17 Y, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 17. Yeah, 10 to the power 17. And 10 to the power 18 Y is 1 ether. So 1 is a very small amount of ether. So I am saying I am only going to give you less than or equal to 0.1 ether at a time. So this is some kind of a new thing that you see require. So this is also a Solidity function which checks for a condition. If condition fails, your transaction is terminated. It doesn't go beyond this line. On the other hand, suppose limit is less than, I mean the amount asked is less than 0.1 ether, then I am saying message.sender.transfer withdraw amount. So again, these are the functions that you have to learn on your own. We cannot cover all the functions, but this is saying whosoever sent this message, whosoever initiated this contract or this transaction, the sender of this transaction should be given the amount of money. Okay. So message is the current transaction, sender is the sender, the person of the account who initiated the transaction, and I am transferring that much money to that guy. Okay. Now your question is, what if I have less than 0.1 ether remaining? So transfer function itself takes care of it. You can explicitly ask it to take care of it. You can explicitly check it, but really you don't have to because transfer function does it for you. Okay. So that is a possibility. Right. So again, this is not a very nice program. It's not a very good program, but it's a very simple program which allows you to withdraw 0.1 ether at a time, provided you have that much money in the contract account. Okay. So let's try this on our. Now this program is not available directly when you download or when you go to Ethereum Remix ID. So I had to type it out, but I still followed the same convention, a number followed by the code. Okay, number followed by the name. And then you can see multiple versions. That's because I'm going to show you few improvements. Okay, so this is our code. So someone said, why write here external payable? So external payable says that external people can pay to this particular contract. See, this contract has to receive some money from others in order to give it to others. So this is like a charitable organization which receives money from some people and then gives it to poor people. Which receives money from let's say rich people and gives it to poor people, like that. Okay. So again, we can compile it. I have set auto compilation, so automatically it gets compiled. Then I have to deploy it. So once again, note that I have not changed my remix. All people have kind of spent some money. So let's go to this one, which is all 100 Ether. And I deploy this. Okay. So it has deployed very quickly again because this is all local things. And now you can see there are two contracts which are deployed. One which was storage, which I did earlier. But I'm just hiding it. This is the faucet. But I'm deleting storage because we don't need it right now. It just takes space. So you can see that only function which this faucet has is withdraw function. Okay, and I can withdraw certain amount. Now to write very large numbers, I have to write it as a string because there are these limitations of JavaScript. Okay, I want to withdraw this much amount. So let me just say some other account has to withdraw it. Okay, it already has 100 ethers. When it withdraws, it should get 100.1 ether. So let me try that. Immediately you see some problem. Okay, so I don't know how to increase the font size here. But at least you can see some error message which says transact to faucet.withdraw error, DM error revert, and again forget about this thing. It is reverting the transaction. The error message is not very good. As I said, Solidity is work in progress. Maybe later people will improve error messages. Okay. So the problem here is, see, I deployed this contract, but I did not send it any money. I did not give it any money. So really this contract does not have any money for others to withdraw. Okay, so this contract is sitting on my network without any money. Now some person came and asked money, it has to reject it. Okay, so then how do I send money? So let's send money from some other account. Again, I use different accounts so that I can show you. So this account has 100 ethers and I say send 5 ethers. Okay. You can see that I don't have any function to send ethers. That's because I really did not write any function to receive ether in the account or send ether into the account. But then again, this is a smart contract feature that if you don't call any function, you just call the contract, it is as if you are sending money to that contract. So I just call this transact function. Okay. So this transact function is just calling the smart contract, in which case, oh, sorry. So because I increase the size a bit. So yeah, so it has sent 5 into 10 to the power 18 WEI because I said send 5 ethers. At the same time, there was some execution cost involved. Okay, so some gas was spent, some execution cost was involved. So what you can see is that the account that I used has slightly less than 95 ethers. 5 ethers were transferred plus some more amount was deducted because of this transaction was called, okay, which is a very small amount, but it is a non-zero amount. Okay, now let me use this ether to withdraw. So I again change the account to something else. Now I call withdraw. As you can see, this time withdrawal is successful, and you can see here the amount with my current account is 100.099999 ether. So once again, actually, if there was no transaction cost, this would have been 100.1 ether. But because there was some transaction cost involved, it is 100.0999. So some small amount of ether has been deducted because of the transaction. Okay. I can withdraw again because I had sent sufficient number of ethers, 5 ethers. Once again, you increase 100.1, approximately 100.2 ethers. And so on. On the other hand, if I ask, so this is 0.1 ether. If I say give me 0.2 ether, again I get an error because my transaction does not allow me to withdraw anything more than 0.1 ether. Okay. So that's my second thing. This again, in this case, there's a problem. Anyone can send money, anyone can withdraw money. There's no control. So can we add some control? Okay. So let's look at enhanced version of this contract. In this case, I have added quite a few things now. And this is where your object-oriented kind of property comes into picture. Constructor. It stores certain variables, states. So now whenever it is deployed, first thing which happens is constructor is called. Right? Message. He used it to transfer money last time. But think about it, constructor is called, which means contract is getting deployed, which means the sender is the person who is deploying the contract. So this is also can be thought of as the owner of the contract. So this name does not mean anything. Really, I can call it Ame, I can call it my faucet or whatever. But I am storing this initial person who created this contract. Right? Now I can do a lot of things with this owner. So let's say after I am done, after a few days, I want to dismantle this charity. Okay. So then the owner only can call a function called destroy. With destroy, you can see it requires that. So let me just show it. So constructor is setting owner to be the sender of the creator. And later, I want to destroy also this contract once my task is over. But then, for destruction, I need message.sender. The person who has called destroy function has to be the same as owner. Not anyone can destroy this contract. Okay. The sender has to be same as the owner, or the person who calls destroy has to be same as the person who created this contract. So same thing, similar kind of checks we can put in other functions as well. And then there is this function called self-destruct. So this destroy is a contract. This is provided by Solidity or Ethereum virtual machine. Okay. Please note that destroying a contract does not mean that blockchain every transaction is also getting destroyed. It is just that from this point onward, no one can call this contract or any other function of this contract. Everything that has happened will remain intact on blockchain. It is just like some memory is being released. Okay. So understand, destroy does not mean history is wiped out. No, history remains as it is. It is just that future no one can use this contract. Okay. Similarly, I mean that 1 followed by 17 0 is very, very difficult to write. So you can also use these units along with values. It becomes much more readable. So I can say 0.1 ether withdrawn. So this is just a cosmetic change. My program is still the okay. So you can do this and we'll share the code. So this is the contract where I have added all these checks. Let me just give. So this is compiled. So I'm deploying it. So let me just use first contract. So please check I am using the first contract to deploy, first account to deploy this contract. Okay, so this is done. You can try all other things. It's the same faucet contract. Okay, so I can withdraw some money. But first I have to send it. What I want to show it, if some other contract wants to destroy it, it won't work. There is an error. Okay, because some other contract does not match the owner of this contract. On the other hand, I can destruct it using the first contract because that's the one which used to create it. Now if I call destroy, you can see it has worked. My contract can no longer be accessed. Now in Remix, somehow it is still shown, but in reality, this contract is gone. Okay, so let me just see if I can call it. So you can see that it's still not taking the number, so I have to give it very big. So I can give very small values. That's not. So in this case, why it has worked, it should really not work. Okay, so Remix has some problem here. Okay, so that's the idea. Now, one of the things that you can see is still this code looks, if you have several functions where you want to put this check like message sender equal to owner, right? It becomes, your program starts becoming messy. And if their checks are complex, so Solidity has a concept of modifier. Okay, so what is this modifier? Basically, modifier says you can put all your conditions at one place or related conditions at one place, only refer to modifier where you want to enforce those conditions. So now what you can do is function destroy, just I go back, it had a condition message.sender equal to owner and then self-destruct owner. Now instead of this whole line, I can just say I have a modifier which requires sender to be same as owner. This is syntax. Okay, so we'll come to that. But then wherever I want to enforce that sender and owner have to be the same, I just put it along with the function signature. Okay, where I describe the function, I say function destroy. It requires that only owner can call it. So what it means is when executing, first this function will be called or the modifier will be called, only then body of the function will be called. Okay. So now if I have 20 different functions which want to check that only owner is allowed to have certain property, then I will put this modifier on those sides. Okay. It makes it more readable. And let's modify this. So few more observations which are there on Remix. I will show you few more updates. Just remove this. I'm not going to execute all of these. We can try things. Okay, so this is our next one which I just showed you where I am using modifier. Okay, but then even this may not be a very good design if you are having to write code which is user friendly. Okay, so what you can do is along with this require. See, require here is just a message, and we saw that the message given was very, very cryptic when our transaction failed. So along with require, you can also provide some user-friendly detailed message. So in this case, I am just telling users that if someone calls it and fails, it will tell that only the contract owner can call this function. This message will be printed whenever a user tries to, or an account other than owner tries to call the function. Okay, and you can also see that now I have what is called inheritance. I have created the contract called owned with certain functionality. It has a member owner, it has a constructor which sets owner to be the creator of the contract, which has a modifier. But then I have a derived contract called mortal. Okay, a mortal is owned, which means it kind of gets all the properties of owned which means this mortal is also having owner, which means this mortal is also having this modifier and so on. So this is little advanced programming. Those who have done Java or C++ should compare it with object-oriented programming. It's not necessary to understand it to write Solidity program, but it makes your code much more organized. Okay. Now I can have 20 different contracts which are all destroyable, which could be destroyed. I can make them subcontract of mortal, in which case I do not have to write this destroy function separately for everyone. They can all share this code given by mortal. Okay. Similarly, I have added explicit check for balance. So recall that transfer does take care of balance ether, that you should have more balance than you are trying to send, but maybe the error message will again be very, very cryptic. So I have added an explicit check which tells the developer, the contract caller, that there is an insufficient balance. I check that the address, the balance at my contract is more than what is being withdrawn. Okay. So all is good, but then to recall that I said very early that it's difficult to figure out what has happened in the contract. Contract is sitting somewhere in the network far away from you. You cannot go and check how many transactions succeeded, how many transactions failed, why something failed, why something was success, and so on. Okay, so it's not a computer which is in your hand. So then if you are writing an application like, let's say, Amazon, which uses some kind of contract to do transaction, how do they figure out which transaction is successful, which transaction failed, was there a payment made or not, or how much payment was made? So contracts, you can add what is called events. Okay, so what is events? Events look very similar to function call. So they have this keyword event followed by name of the event followed by certain parameters. Okay, and now you can call these events as something very similar to functions whenever you want to generate some kind of log information. So for example, now I have put some kind of details inside this function. Earlier is what is an empty function. So whenever someone sends some amount, you are triggering an event deposit, okay, which says message.sender, message.value, which tells you who was the sender and how much value was sent. So this variable stores the amount of ether that is transferred. Similarly, on withdrawal, we are emitting the event withdrawal, which also tells you who is the sender. Basically, in this case, it's really the receiver who receives the money and how much money was withdrawn. Okay, so what happens when we run this contract? So let me again try to run it. Okay, so the transaction has been deployed. So I am using address with capital C4 at the end to send certain ethers. Let's put 4 ethers. This is the latest one. Okay. So an event should get generated. Yeah, so here you can see that an event is generated where there are certain other arguments, but you can see that deposit has been created from gives me the address of the account which initiated this. So remember, I used C4 contract, capital C4, and this amount is telling me the amount that was deposited. And again, these names are what I chose. Okay, to amount, it should be like any other programming language. Use names which are variables which are giving some information. But it can be from, it can be sender, it can be anything. It's not restricted beyond certain rules of programming language. something. Okay, so I think sometime first this should have been quite a small amount. So withdraw is causing problem. I don't know why. Oh, it says int. You int withdraw amount. Did I make any mistake? Let me just check. Okay, sorry, I forgot. Yeah, it's y, so I have to give it in integers, not. So this is in y, so I can give integers, not decimal values. So I have withdrawn, but if I look at the details, I should get an event which tells me withdraw amount. But yeah, so from so withdrawal to and amount. Somewhere there should be this event. For whatever reason, it's not shown here. But again, when we run truffle, we can see that event. Okay. So again, these events are useful because your external applications can collect these information and maintain their own records. For example, Amazon can keep track of how much money was paid and how many things were sent. So some of these things are not visible. Okay. So I will take few questions. We are close to end. Yeah. So Pragya has found that issue that I was putting point values. So events are like log. Yes, exactly. So yeah, that's correct. So someone has asked, can we convert MATLAB code to smart contract using APIs? Again, I am very new into this blockchain business. I think someone may have created MATLAB to Solidity translator or MATLAB to directly EVM bytecode generator. Similarly from Python also. Okay, so these things should be there. If not, they will be there. But I am not used them. Can Remix IDE be locally installed? Yes, it can be installed. So what is Remix environment? So Remix, as I said, it's like any other IDE. So if you have used Python, you might have used Anaconda or Idle or Jupyter Notebook. So Remix is in that league. It's a way of quickly running Solidity smart contracts. From where we can get the faucet code, we will share it. Okay, I'm going to share it with you. Somebody said I couldn't be able to understand truffle. That's because we have not yet covered it. That will be tomorrow. Okay. So all this code we will share it with you. I mean, in next 1 hour, next half an hour. Your next session is at 4. Before that, we will share it with you, and then you can try it on your system. Some of you are having trouble in running Remix or other stuff, so we will also look at it. So where to learn Solidity from? I will give you references. In fact, the online documentation is very, very good. Another reason for using online documentation is it is changing. Okay. So if you buy a book, probably you will learn 70-75% of it, or you will learn 100% of it, but by the time you use it, 25% might have changed. Okay. So Anurag is asking why running smart contracts take too much time. So think about it. I think once again we have to change our mindset that these contracts are not running on a single computer. Okay, Remix is a different. Remix is just a simulator. In reality, the contract goes onto Ethereum network Now this Ethereum network not simply run your 5 lines of code. They also have to go through the entire history of the contracts. Okay. Remember what Professor Sandeep said about blockchain. When you verify a transaction, you also have to verify transactions which were done previously. Like in the case of Bitcoin, you have to find the whole history to validate whether you own the Bitcoin or not. Something similar happens here as well. Though they have optimizations, still, first thing, running the transaction will take time. Secondly, making sure that this transaction makes into the blockchain. So there are these miners which will make sure that, so whether it is proof of stake, or proof of work, or proof of what is it called, some other kind of consensus mechanism, they all are going to take time. Okay, so even though conceptually we are having a world computer, it's really distributed across hundreds or thousands of nodes. Okay, so what is most common error in Ethereum blockchain, like null pointer exception in Java, etc.? So since there are no explicit pointers here, probably you won't get those errors. But there can be very bad logical errors. I mean, you should read about this DAO attack and so on. Okay, people were able to steal Ethereum and that forced a hard fork. We talked about hard fork in Ethereum. People stole because there was some bug in the original rule set. Does the contract become slower over time since it has to check previous transaction? I think so, but I am not the authority on that. Okay. So we have to wait to get the result until it's done. See, the contract that I am showing you, they are very, what you say, cooked
we are
kind of
very
contracts. In reality,
innovative
all these things will be automated.
which
So your wallet application. So tomorrow, Professor Aparajita Ojha will talk about decentralized applications and wallets, etc. So really, all these things happen in the background. So like when you send an order on Amazon, okay, you really don't sit there and wait for your thing to come. You start doing other work, right? You pay the money. After a few minutes, you get an acknowledgement that your credit card transaction is done, and then you kind of do other work till you receive your item. So you can think of this thing as very similar to that. So you initiate the transaction, but then you can start working on other stuff. The transaction will get confirmed. Yes. So in a way, it's a unit to measure amount of work done to execute a smart contract or transaction. Okay. So the reason, again, this name gas comes from petrol. In US, they are called petroleum as gas. They don't call it petrol in general. We call it petrol or diesel. So in a way, they said that when you are executing a transaction, you are spending gas. Just like when you are driving a car, you are spending petrol or gas. So the gas is the unit of work. Now the thing is, just again, think about it. As things progress, it might happen that you get better computers, so the amount of work, even though it is the same, the cost of it will be different. Okay, so Ethereum people have kept amount of work done separate from amount of money you have to pay for doing that work. So gas, again, depending on market condition, depending on other condition, the rate of gas changes. So the actual amount you pay for a transaction depends on amount of gas and the cost of gas. So gas is in liter and ether is like your rupees. So if you spend 1 liter of petrol today, it might cost you 100 rupees. If you spend 1 liter of petrol tomorrow, it might cost you 105 rupees if the price has increased, or 95 rupees if the price has decreased. So same is the relationship between gas and ether. When transactions may be invalid, so I think Professor Shukla told you many things. You try to access things which are not in your control. You try to use resources which are beyond what is specified. You specify gas limit which is very low compared to the amount of work is done in doing the transaction. Okay, and so on. So I think we'll stop here. It's already 10 minutes beyond the class, but we'll be back at 4 p.m. and then Samir will take you through the lab, and we'll do all these things. There will be repetition of quite a bit of things. Okay. So thank you, and I give it back to Professor Ojja.
Recording stopped.
Thank you so very much, Professor Mekakari. You have so well started this important smart contract, basically solidity and smart contract. Participants, the next session we will be having the same thing, and you will be practicing with you. So don't use your mobile phones for joining the program. You must have a desktop or a laptop so that you can also enjoy doing the same thing which Professor Karkare has told you. So we will be starting with a smart contract, and Mr. Samir Jain is going to take it forward. So I hope all of you enjoyed this session. It was such a wonderful session. One thing I would like to tell some of you that whenever we are in a very large classroom, speaker has to address each and every question, and there are sometimes so many unnecessary chats which distracts the mind of the speaker. So may I request you not to put any chats which are irrelevant to the chat box, so that the classes go smoothly, the sessions go smoothly. That is our request to all of you. Secondly, some people are like putting some kind of, they are just flooding the chat box. Please don't do that. In case we find that you are unnecessarily flooding the chat box, we will be compelled to remove you from the session. So I hope that you will not do it. There are very senior people who are attending these programs, and very young people who are also attending this program. So it's a very heterogeneous kind of class. And everybody for the last several years is trying to understand how blockchains are evolving. What are blockchains? So I would say that it's a totally new area where all it can be applied is very difficult to answer at the moment, right? So my suggestion to all of you is to have patience. In 5-6 days, we will take you to a point from where you can think that you can start learning seriously a specific topic or a specific area in the blockchain. I'm sure that you will enjoy this session. Thank you so very much. Don't forget to check the Canvas, your Canvas account today in the evening. Before that, we will not be, uploading, but we'll try uploading as soon as possible.